An entire city once vanished beneath the earth to save its people. This is the story of derinkuyu, a massive underground city built to hide 20,000 people. By the end, you will understand how a community could survive for months in complete secrecy, cut off from the sun and the world above. How did they get air and water so deep underground? And what finally forced them to abandon their hidden world? What does it take for a society to choose darkness in order to preserve its light? The ground here was not just dirt and stone, it was a blank page. The story of derinkuyu begins with a geological miracle, a landscape that seems sculpted by giants and painted by the gods. This is Cappadocia, a region in what is now Turkey, known for its surreal towers of rock called fairy chimneys. But those whimsical spires are only the surface decoration. The true secret lies in what they are made of, a material called volcanic tuff. Imagine a rock that is as soft as hardened clay when first exposed to air, allowing you to carve it with simple hand tools. Yet once it dries, it sets into a material as strong as concrete. It is a builder's dream, a sculptor's perfect medium. This was the canvas upon which the underground city was drawn. The ancient people here did not quarry stone to build walls. They simply removed the spaces where walls were not needed. They were not constructing in the traditional sense. They were revealing a city that the earth had already held in potential. Every corridor, every room, every staircase was a negative space, carved out of the solid, living rock. This unique property of the tuff made the impossible seem almost effortless. It allowed for the creation of multiple stacked levels, each one structurally sound, because they were all part of a single, gigantic block of stone. The stability was inherent. There were no foundations to dig, no mortar to mix, no beams to support a ceiling that was itself the unbroken bedrock. This geological gift was the first and most important architect of derinkuyu, setting the stage for a refuge that was as much a part of the landscape as the mountains above it. But this perfect stone was not carved for art or for palaces. It was carved from a deep and unshakable fear. The soft tuff that made construction easy also made the surface world terrifyingly vulnerable. Cappadocia was not a quiet corner of the world. It was a bustling, dangerous crossroads, sitting directly on the ancient Silk Road. This brought trade and wealth, but it also painted a giant target on the map. For centuries, this region was caught in the grinding conflict between the mighty Byzantine Empire and a wave of invading forces, most notably Arab armies pushing north. Life above ground was a precarious gamble. At any moment, the horizon could darken not with storm clouds, but with dust kicked up by approaching cavalry. A raid was not a possibility. It was a recurring event, a seasonal danger as predictable and as devastating as a plague of locusts. Farmers would see the signal fires lit on distant hills and know they had minutes, perhaps an hour, to gather everything they valued and disappear. Their homes of stone and mud on the surface were indefensible, so they made a profound choice. They traded the open sky for the embrace of the earth. Going underground was not a lifestyle, it was the ultimate contingency plan, a defensive strategy born of pure necessity. This was about community survival on a scale we can scarcely comprehend today. It was not a retreat for a few wealthy families. It was a plan to save everyone, 20,000 souls vanishing as if the earth itself had swallowed them whole. The city below was not a home, it was a lifeboat, and the entire population knew that at any moment they might need to board it for a voyage into darkness that could last for months. The motivation was not mystery, it was mathematics, a simple, brutal calculation, the certainty of loss above versus the chance of life below. Every chisel mark in that soft volcanic rock was a vote for the future, a desperate, brilliant bet against annihilation. The first test of their refuge came not in the dark depths below, But in those frantic final moments on the surface, success depended on disappearing without a trace, leaving an invading force staring at an empty landscape, utterly baffled. This is why the entrances to derinkuyu were masterpieces of misdirection. You would not find a grand staircase or a marked doorway. Instead, the city breathed through hidden pores in the earth, each one a brilliantly simple trapdoor to another world. Often, the only way in was through the floor of a humble surface home, a cellar that did not end. A family could flee from their own kitchen, pulling a rug over the hatch as they descended. But the most iconic defense was the massive stone wheel. Picture a single, circular slab of rock, taller than a person and weighing hundreds of pounds, perfectly fitted into a carved groove in the tunnel floor. From the inside, it could be rolled smoothly into place with a firm push, slotting seamlessly into the wall to form a solid, immovable barrier. From the outside, it looked like just another part of the bedrock, indistinguishable from the surrounding stone. An attacker might stand right in front of it and never know a city was holding its breath just inches away. Other entrances were even more cunning, designed as vertical shafts just wide enough for one person to drop through. These could be instantly sealed from below with a single heavy capstone. Imagine the frustration of a raiding party, finding a hole in the ground only to discover it blocked by a ton of rock, with 20,000 people silently waiting beneath their feet. This was security through absolute anonymity. The city did not try to withstand a siege at its gates because it had no gates to find. Its first and greatest weapon was the illusion that it did not exist at all. Once that stone wheel rumbled shut, the world above became a memory, and the long, silent vigil in the earth could truly begin. But sealing the door was just the first step. A new and more intimate challenge immediately presented itself. How do you keep 20,000 people alive in a sealed stone tomb? But a sealed door was only the first layer of a much deeper strategy. The true genius of derinkuyu was not just in hiding its people, but in preparing for the unthinkable. What if someone actually got inside? The moment you passed that great stone wheel, you entered a world designed not for convenience but for control. The corridors were not straight, welcoming avenues. They were a deliberately confusing labyrinth. They twisted and turned at sharp angles, often so narrow that only one person could pass at a time. The ceilings were kept intentionally low, forcing anyone unfamiliar with the space to move in a permanent, disorienting crouch. For a resident, this was simply the way home. For an armed invader, it was a nightmare. They could not form a battle line, could not charge, could not even stand up straight. Every corner became a potential ambush point, every shadow a hiding place for a defender who knew the route by heart. The city itself became a weapon. This architectural cunning went even further. Scattered throughout the network were dead ends, corridors that simply stopped at a blank wall. An attacker rushing forward would find themselves trapped in a pocket of stone with nowhere to go, while defenders could use hidden side passages to appear behind them. Small, camouflaged openings in the walls served as communication shafts, allowing whispers to travel between levels so the community could coordinate their movements in utter silence. The residents held every advantage. They knew the map, they controlled the bottlenecks, and they understood the psychological toll of fighting in a cramped, pitch-black maze. The design ensured that even if the outer door fell, the battle was far from over. The city would contract like a fist, drawing the threat deeper into its most defensible choke points, where numbers and heavy weapons meant nothing. It turned the very act of invasion into a slow, exhausting, and terrifying process. This was defense in its most elegant and brutal form, using the environment itself to neutralize any threat. But outsmarting an enemy was one thing, outlasting time was another. A far more relentless adversary awaited them in the darkness, one that no stone wheel could keep out, the slow, silent threat of a community simply running out of air. The air in a sealed tomb does not last long. For 20,000 people, the simple act of breathing would become their most immediate and deadly enemy within hours. Yet the air in derinkuyu remained fresh, a quiet miracle engineered with breathtaking foresight. Scattered throughout the city, often disguised within the walls of surface structures or hidden in rocky outcrops, were over 50 ventilation shafts. These were not simple holes, but meticulously engineered chimneys, some plunging over 180 feet straight down through solid rock to connect the deepest levels with the open sky. They functioned like the lungs of a great stone beast. Cooler, denser air from the surface would sink down these shafts, while the warmer, exhaled air from the crowded chambers would rise and escape through others, creating a passive, constant circulation. This was natural air conditioning on a monumental scale, a system that required no power, only an understanding of physics and a profound commitment to the long game. A raiding party on the surface would see only a few odd holes in the ground, perhaps thinking them animal burrows or natural fissures, never guessing they were staring down the breathing tubes of an entire civilization hiding in plain sight. But air was only half the equation. An army can wait at a blocked well, but it cannot siege a river deep underground. Water was the other pillar of their survival, and here too, the builders thought in terms of centuries, not seasons. They did not rely on cisterns filled by unpredictable rain, which could be poisoned or blocked from above. Instead, they went deeper, much deeper. They carved immense, dedicated shafts straight down through the volcanic tuff until they struck the permanent water table far below the city's lowest floor. This was a self-contained, secret aquifer, a lifeline utterly independent of the world above. Each well was a private spring, ensuring that even during a siege lasting months, the community would not thirst. The design was holistic, where every element served multiple purposes. Those same ventilation shafts that brought life-giving air could, in a pinch, become slender escape routes for scouts or messengers. They also acted as natural communication tubes, allowing voices or tapped signals to travel between levels without risking exposure in the main corridors. This interconnected thinking reveals a mindset far beyond mere hiding. It was about creating a fully functional, sustainable world capable of enduring in perpetuity. The engineers of derinkuyu did not just carve rooms, they orchestrated an ecosystem, balancing the delicate, invisible flows of air and water with the same care they gave to carving a staircase. They built a heartbeat into the stone itself, yet with these profound physical needs met, a more subtle challenge began to surface in the gloom. One no shaft could vent away, the immense psychological weight of a life lived entirely by lamplight, severed from the sun and the seasons. Beyond the defensive corridors lay a world designed for living, not just surviving. Derinkuyu was a city in miniature, a complete society replicated in the dark. The layout reveals a master plan, dividing the caverns into distinct functional zones that speak to a sophisticated and organized community. You can walk through these spaces today and see the clear imprint of daily life. There are residential quarters where families slept in rounded niches carved directly into the soft, tough walls, each alcove a private pocket of darkness in the communal gloom. There are communal kitchens, identifiable by the soot marks on the ceilings above simple hearths, their chimneys ingeniously snaking up through the rock to vent smoke to the surface far above, disguised as natural fissures. There were stables for livestock, essential for milk, wool, and transport, with stone rings set into the walls to tether animals and troughs carved from the floor. There are even rooms dedicated to industry, with circular depressions and grinding stones that served as presses for wine and olive oil, turning the bounty of the surface into storable provisions for the long confinement. And perhaps most telling of all, there are churches. These are not mere alcoves, but proper places of worship with arched ceilings, altars hewn from the living rock, and crosses carefully chiseled into the walls. This zoning tells us something profound. The people of derinkuyu were not just hiding, they were preserving. they brought their entire social structure underground with them. The division of space allowed for a division of labor. Cooks, animal tenders, vintners, and priests all had their designated places, maintaining the rhythms of work and purpose that define a healthy community. The churches ensured that religious and cultural practices could continue uninterrupted, providing spiritual solace and a crucial link to their identity, to the normalcy of the world they had temporarily left behind. In these carved halls, they fought against more than invaders. They fought against despair by clinging fiercely to the routines and beliefs that made them who they were. This meticulous planning transformed a shelter into a home, however temporary, allowing a sense of order and continuity to flourish even in the most extraordinary circumstances. Yet this intricate social machine required a commander, a system to manage the delicate balance of 20,000 lives in such a pressured environment. A city in the dark still needs rules, with 20,000 people living in such tight quarters under the immense pressure of a siege. Chaos was a threat as real as any invader. While no written constitution has been found carved into these walls, the city itself tells the story of its social blueprint. The layout speaks of a system, likely a blend of hierarchical leadership and deep communal trust. Someone had to make the impossible decisions, to coordinate the distribution of food and water, to assign families to their carved-out niches, and to manage the silent security patrols that watched the labyrinthine corridors. The presence of large, open chambers, far bigger than any family dwelling, points to spaces designed for gathering, for announcements, for resolving disputes. In a place with no privacy and no escape, maintaining order was not about control, but about collective survival. Preventing a single spark of conflict from igniting was as vital as manning the stone wheel doors. This implies a powerful, unspoken social contract, a recognition that every individual's fate was woven into the whole. Your neighbor's cough, your child's cry, another family's hunger. These were not private matters, they were communal vulnerabilities. The leaders here would not have been distant kings, but practical managers, perhaps elders or respected warriors, whose authority was derived from their ability to keep the delicate machine of the underground city running. Their most important duty may have been managing morale, using those communal spaces for storytelling, prayer, or simply reaffirming the shared purpose that had brought them all into the earth, to outlast the storm above and return to the light together. This intricate social order was the final, vital layer of their defense, the glue that held the entire desperate experiment together. Yet, for all their preparation, a question lingers in the cool, still air of those empty halls. What was life actually like during those long months of confinement? The true rhythm of life in derinkuyu was measured not in days, but in meals. Feeding 20,000 people in a sealed, sunless world was a logistical puzzle of staggering proportions, solved through meticulous preparation and ingenious adaptation. The city's survival depended on a deep larder, one that had to be filled long before the first alarm fire was ever lit. This is why the largest chambers in the upper levels were not for people, but for provisions. Vast, cool, and bone-dry storage rooms were carved to hold mountains of grain, stacked clay jars of olive oil, and sacks of dried lentils and beans. Salted meats and aged cheeses preserved on the surface were brought down to these natural refrigerators. The volcanic tuff itself was the perfect partner in this endeavor, its porous nature providing superb insulation, maintaining a constant, cool temperature that dramatically slowed spoilage. This was a strategic food reserve, a calorie bank meant to be drawn upon slowly and carefully, with every portion accounted for. It was the physical manifestation of their collective foresight, a promise to the future carved in wheat and barley. But storage was only half the battle. Turning those raw staples into edible food without revealing their position was the next critical challenge. This is where the communal kitchens come alive in our understanding. These were not cozy hearths for family cooking. They were the engine rooms of survival, centralized for efficiency and safety. You can still see the evidence, the circular depressions in the floor where large grinding stones were used to mill grain into flour, a daily task that would have filled the air with a fine, dusty haze. Nearby, shallow cooking pits were lined with stone, where communal stews of grains, legumes, and precious bits of preserved meat would simmer for hours. The genius, however, is in what you do not see, the smoke. The architects designed a hidden ventilation network specifically for these kitchens. Narrow, twisting chimneys were carved up through dozens of feet of rock, channeling smoke and cooking odors away from the main living areas and dispersing them through tiny, camouflaged openings on the surface, far from the main entrances. To an outsider, it would look like a wisp of mist or a trick of the light, never the telltale sign of a massive hidden population preparing their dinner. The diet that emerged from these kitchens was necessarily simple, monotonous, but deeply sustaining. It was built on the backbone of carbohydrates and proteins that could last: thick barley porridges, dense flatbreads, lentil soups, and occasional strips of salted meat. Fresh fruits and vegetables would have been a rare luxury, consumed quickly in the initial days of descent. This culinary reality paints a clear picture. Every aspect of life, even the most fundamental act of sharing a meal, was completely re-engineered for the reality of the depths. There were no festive gatherings, no elaborate recipes, just the efficient conversion of stored energy into continued life. The shared meal from a communal pot became more than nutrition. It was a daily ritual of unity, a quiet reminder that they were all in this together, nourished by the same careful planning that had brought them into the stone. Yet, as the weeks turned into months, even the most perfectly engineered systems would face a strain no architect could plan for: the slow, grinding pressure on the human spirit itself, confined in endless night. But the human spirit requires more than bread and a safe corridor. In the profound darkness, where the sun was a forgotten memory and the only sounds were the echoes of their own breath, the people of Derinkuyu carved out spaces for something intangible yet essential: faith. Scattered throughout the city's levels are its spiritual anchors, underground churches hewn directly from the living rock. These are not simple alcoves or hastily marked rooms. They are deliberate, often beautiful architectural statements. Some feature vaulted ceilings that arch gracefully overhead, a conscious echo of the grand basilicas on the surface. On their walls, you can still see the careful chisel marks forming crosses, intricate geometric patterns, and recessed niches that likely held icons or small oil lamps. The effort required to create these spaces in the midst of carving out mere survival speaks volumes. They were not afterthoughts, they were central to the city's blueprint. In a time of terror, these chambers served a multifaceted purpose. Primarily, they were places of worship where the community could gather to pray, to sing hymns in hushed tones, and to perform the sacred rites that connected them to their God. This was a direct lifeline to the divine, a way to plead for protection and to find solace in ritual when the world above offered none. But their function extended far beyond the religious. These churches became the community's living room, its town square. In a city with no daylight, no public parks, and no open markets, these carved-out halls provided the only large, open spaces where people could congregate safely. Here, elders could share news or stories, families could see one another's faces in the lamplight, and a sense of normalcy could be, however briefly, restored. The psychological comfort was immense. To stand in a space designed for beauty and reverence, surrounded by familiar symbols, was a powerful rebellion against the crushing anonymity of the tunnels. It reinforced their cultural identity, reminding them that they were not just refugees in a hole. They were a people with a history, a creed, and a future worth praying for. The crosses on the walls were more than decoration, they were declarations, a way of saying, "We are still here and we are still ourselves." This dedication to creating sacred space in the depths highlights a profound truth about human resilience. Even when physically severed from the sun, the sky, and the entire natural world, the drive to connect with something greater, to find meaning in suffering, and to maintain the rituals that define a community does not vanish, it becomes more urgent. The stone churches of derinkuyu stand as silent testimony to the idea that sometimes the deepest foundations of survival are not made of grain or water, but of hope and shared belief. Yet, this meticulously planned world of faith and function could not exist in a vacuum. It needed to connect to the wider landscape, to other pockets of people hiding in the earth. Even a city in hiding cannot let its tools grow dull. While derinkuyu was not a bustling market town, a quiet, invisible economy pulsed through its corridors, a system of barter and skill that kept the entire operation from grinding to a halt. Think of it not as commerce for profit, but as metabolism for survival. Every worn sandal, every cracked clay jar, every fraying tunic represented a potential point of failure in their sealed world. This is where the artisans became the unsung heroes of the depths. The tool maker, sharpening blades on a portable whetstone by lamplight, was not just repairing a farming implement, he was preserving the community's ability to harvest food when they finally surfaced. The leatherworker, patching water skins and belts with carefully hoarded scraps, was safeguarding their capacity to carry and store. The weaver, working a simple loom in a quiet corner, was actively fighting against the slow decay of their clothing, turning stored wool or flax into replacement cloth. Their work was preventative medicine for their material world. With no access to new supplies, every repair extended the lifespan of their most crucial possessions. Payment would not have been in coin but in reciprocal obligation, a share of food, an offer to mind children, or the promise of future labor. A family with extra lamp oil might trade it to the tool maker for sharpening their blades, a cycle of mutual need that wove the community tighter. The presence of those carved wine presses takes on new meaning in this context. The production of wine underground was an act of profound foresight. Beyond its possible use in religious ceremonies, which offered immense spiritual comfort, wine was a stable, valuable commodity. It did not spoil easily, and it represented a tangible piece of their cultural identity, a taste of the vineyards under the sun. Upon re-emergence, barrels of aged wine could have been traded for seeds, livestock, or tools they desperately needed to restart their lives above. This underground economy was never about growth or wealth. It was a holding pattern, a conscious effort to maintain the community's material integrity so that when the stone wheels finally rolled open, they would not step out into the sunlight as paupers, but as a people still equipped to rebuild. Yet, for all their careful maintenance of goods and social bonds, the architects of derinkuyu knew that some threats required a more drastic form of separation, leading to the creation of spaces designed not for living, but for absolute isolation. The story of derinkuyu was not written in a single year or even a single lifetime. To stand in its deepest chamber is to stand inside a living timeline, a physical record of fear and innovation carved over more than 1,000 years. Unraveling exactly when this all began is a challenge for archaeologists because the city is a palimpsest, a manuscript where older writings have been scraped away to make room for new text. Only here the pages are stone and the writing is made with chisels. The very earliest excavations, the first hesitant tunnels, may reach back to a staggering 8 or 7 centuries before the Common Era. This was a time of powerful regional kingdoms, and some scholars suggest the work could have been started by the Phrygians, an ancient Anatolian people, or other early inhabitants who first discovered the potential of the soft volcanic rock. These initial forays were likely modest, perhaps just a few connected rooms for storage or temporary shelter, but the seed of the idea was planted deep in the earth. The monumental city we associate with derinkuyu, however, truly took shape under the hands of Byzantine Christians, from around the 6th to the 10th century of the Common Era. This was the period of intense and recurring conflict with Arab armies, the very threat that made a refuge of such scale not just desirable but essential. This was not a single construction project with a grand opening ceremony. It was a cumulative, communal effort that spanned generations. Imagine a father, having survived a raid, teaching his son how to carve a new staircase descending to a deeper, safer level. That son, decades later, might oversee the excavation of a new ventilation shaft to serve the expanded population. His granddaughter might then direct the carving of a new church, a spiritual anchor for a community preparing for an even longer confinement. Each generation inherited both the sanctuary and the responsibility to improve it, to deepen it, to adapt it to the new tactics of their enemies above. This long, slow accretion explains the city's breathtaking complexity. A corridor might begin wide and straight from an earlier phase, then suddenly narrow and twist where it was extended during a more perilous time. A room originally used for storage might later be converted into a stable, its walls fitted with tethering rings by later hands. The architecture itself is a diary of perpetual threat, each new level a response to a new wave of danger. This continuous adaptation is the most telling clue of all. Derinkuyu was never finished. It was always a work in progress, a living project that grew and changed with the people it protected. It stands not as a monument to a single brilliant engineer, but as a testament to the collective memory and resilience of a community that refused to vanish, choosing instead to slowly, patiently, carve their defiance into the bedrock of their homeland. Derinkuyu was not a solitary fortress, but the deepest star in a hidden constellation. Across the rolling landscape of Cappadocia, more than 200 other underground settlements have been discovered, each one a testament to the same desperate ingenuity. This was not a single community's secret, it was a regional survival strategy carved into the very bones of the earth. Just a few miles from Derinkuyu lies Cappadocia, another massive subterranean city, and between them, archaeologists believe, ran a tunnel stretching for several miles. This connection is the key to understanding the true scale of their planning. Imagine a scenario where the stone wheels of derinkuyu were finally breached. The population would not have been trapped. They could have funneled through this secret underground highway to the relative safety of Cappadocia, vanishing from one refuge only to reappear in another. This transforms the story from a single holdout into a coordinated, networked defense. The cities themselves were specialized. Some were smaller, designed for perhaps a few extended families or a single village, with simpler layouts and fewer levels. Others, like Derinkuyu and Cappadocia, functioned as regional capitals, vast enough to absorb the populations of surrounding settlements. This tiered system suggests a sophisticated societal response. During times of heightened threat, outlying communities could retreat to their local shelters, while if a major invasion force approached, the entire region might consolidate into the largest, most defensible strongholds, connected by those clandestine tunnels. Studying these sister cities is like examining different models from the same workshop. You see variations in the placement of ventilation shafts, the design of rolling stone doors, and the organization of storage chambers. These differences are not flaws, they are adaptations to local geology and community size. By comparing them, we see Derinkuyu not as a miraculous anomaly, but as the pinnacle of a widespread cultural phenomenon. This was a society that had fully internalized the necessity of the underground, turning what began as simple caves into an entire parallel civilization beneath the fields and vineyards. The network reveals a chilling and brilliant reality for the people of ancient Cappadocia. The true homeland was not just the sunlit surface, but the secured darkness that lay beneath it. Their safety depended on a map that existed in memory and in whispered plans, a map where cities were linked not by roads, but by secret passages, creating a defensive web so resilient that even if one node fell, the culture itself would endure in the next darkened hall. Yet, this intricate web of stone raises a profound question about the people who wove it. Who were they, and what powerful force finally compelled them to seal these doors for the last time? For centuries, the great underground city slept, its deepest secrets known only to the earth itself. Up on the surface, life in the modern Turkish town of Derinkuyu carried on, its residents largely unaware of the labyrinth beneath their feet. Local farmers, however, had always known of a few strange caves and cool, dark chambers just below the ground. They used these spaces as convenient cellars, storing potatoes and apples in the perpetual cool, perhaps noticing odd carvings on the walls but thinking little of them. The full, staggering scale of what lay below was a faded legend, a ghost story told by elders. That all changed in the year 1963, in the most ordinary way imaginable. A local man was renovating his home, knocking down an old wall in his basement. When the stones fell away instead of more packed earth, he found a dark, yawning opening. A draft of ancient, cool air whispered out. Curious, he widened the hole and peered inside, his lamplight revealing not a small storage pit, but a seemingly endless stone corridor descending into blackness. He had accidentally broken through a sealed passageway, a door that had been closed for perhaps 500 years. This was not just a hidden room, it was an invitation into a lost world. Word of the find spread quickly, reaching archaeologists and authorities. What followed was a careful, years-long process of exploration and mapping. Teams ventured into the depths with ropes, lights, and measuring tapes, slowly unraveling the city's complex layout. They cleared collapsed passages, stabilized delicate walls, and began the meticulous work of understanding how this stone machine had functioned. Each new level revealed more of the story: the kitchens with their soot-stained ceilings, the churches with their carved crosses, the ingenious ventilation shafts. The accidental discovery in a humble basement had opened a portal, transforming a local curiosity into one of the 20th century's most stunning archaeological revelations. This led to its official opening to the public in 1969, and eventually to its designation as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a global recognition of its profound value. The modern world could finally walk the same corridors where 20,000 people once waited in silence, turning whispered legend into tangible, awe-inspiring history. The artifacts left behind in derinkuyu are not treasures of gold or silver, but something far more telling: the quiet debris of a life on hold. Over the centuries, many valuable items were likely removed, either by the departing residents or later visitors. What remains scattered in the dust are the humble, indispensable tools of a community in waiting. A broken piece of a large storage jar, its clay worn smooth, speaks of grain carefully rationed. A simple stone spindle whorl, used for spinning wool into thread, tells of mending clothes by lamplight. The most common finds are the fragments of small, shallow oil lamps made from local clay. These were the sons of their underground world, each one casting a fragile, flickering circle of light that pushed back the absolute darkness, defining the boundaries of a room, a task, a face. You can almost see the soot from their wicks still staining the ceilings of the small, carved niches meant to hold them. Then there are the grinding stones, heavy, hand-held tools with a smooth, concave surface. These were essential, used for milling grain into flour every single day. A rhythmic, grinding sound that would have been a constant background noise in the communal kitchens, the sound of survival itself. Together, these objects form a powerful inventory. Their utter simplicity is their message. There are no fine ceramics, no jewelry, no decorative sculptures. Every recovered item has a clear, practical function related to the core needs of air, water, food, light, and spiritual solace. This stark utility confirms the city's singular purpose. It was not a home, but a lifeboat, where ornamentation had no value and efficiency meant everything. Perhaps the most significant archaeological clue, however, is defined by an absence. Despite the scale and long history of the city, archaeologists have found no evidence of it being a final resting place. There are no burial chambers, no ossuaries, no remains suggesting it was used as a catacomb. This critical detail supports the historical accounts of derinkuyu as a temporary refuge. People came here to wait out a storm, not to meet their end. When the danger passed, they gathered their belongings, their animals, and their hopes, and they returned to the surface world, leaving behind only the things that were too heavy, too broken, or too commonplace to carry. These forgotten objects are therefore not garbage, they are echoes. A pottery shard is the ghost of a shared meal. A worn grinding stone is the memory of 1,000 loaves of bread. A soot-blackened lamp niche holds the imprint of a flame that once kept the dark at bay, both literally and spiritually. They transform the abstract idea of hiding into a tangible reality of daily chores, quiet industry, and the patient, grinding work of waiting for the world above to become safe again. The silent stability of derinkuyu is its most profound deception. To carve out such vast emptiness without bringing the entire mountain down upon itself required a masterful understanding of the stone's hidden logic. Preventing a catastrophic collapse was the first and most critical calculation, a puzzle solved not with formulas but with a deep, tactile intuition for the rock itself. The builders were not just diggers, they were sculptors who understood they were working with a single, gigantic block. Their primary technique was one of strategic restraint. As they excavated rooms and corridors, they would deliberately leave behind massive, thick pillars of untouched bedrock, standing like mighty tree trunks holding up the ceiling. These were not added later for support, they were planned from the start, left in place as the space around them was carefully hollowed out. This method created a grid of natural support columns, integral to the mountain and impossible to weaken. The shape of the spaces they carved was equally deliberate. Look up in many of the larger chambers, and you will see the ceiling is not flat, but gently arched. This curve is not an aesthetic choice, it is a fundamental principle of engineering. An arch is nature's perfect load-bearing shape, channeling the immense weight of the rock above down and outwards into the sturdy side walls and those central pillars, rather than allowing it to press directly down on a vulnerable flat span. This intuitive grasp of physics meant that each room became a self-supporting structure, a vault locked in perfect tension. This empirical genius scaled to an almost unbelievable degree. They repeated this process level after careful level for 18 discovered floors, creating a vertical city that was inherently stable because every part of it was a single, interconnected sculpture. The deeper they went, the more precise their work had to be, accounting for the cumulative pressure from all the rock above. That this entire subterranean metropolis has stood intact for well over 1,000 years, through countless earthquakes that have toppled surface civilizations, is the ultimate testament to their skill. They worked without blueprints, without theoretical engineering, guided only by the feel of the chisel and the accumulated wisdom of generations who learned to listen to the whispers of the stone. Their legacy is not merely the space they created, but the enduring silence of the spaces that did not fall. This remarkable feat of underground architecture inevitably leads us to a more intimate question, one that moves from the grand scale of engineering to the scale of a single human life in that endless night. The greatest challenge in derinkuyu was not the stone above them, but the silence within. To endure a confinement that could stretch for months required a fortress of the mind, a collective will as carefully maintained as the ventilation shafts. The physical environment was a constant psychological assault, absolute darkness broken only by the faint, dancing glow of oil lamps would have erased all sense of day and night, warping time itself. The air, though fresh, carried the intimate sounds and smells of 20,000 neighbors, a permanent reminder of the crowding. Every distant rumble from above, every creak of the stone, could be misinterpreted as the sound of discovery, of the stone wheel being breached. This was a life of sustained, low-grade alarm, a state of readiness that could fray even the strongest nerves. To combat this, the community weaponized normalcy. The strict maintenance of daily routines was not just about efficiency, it was a lifeline. The predictable rhythm of milling grain at a certain hour, tending to the animals, gathering for prayers, and sharing the communal meal created anchors in a timeless sea. These routines imposed order on chaos, giving each person a role and a purpose, a reason to get up from their sleeping niche even when there was no sunrise to greet. Storytelling would have become a vital art form. In the dim lamplight of a communal chamber, elders would recount tales of past sieges survived, of heroes from their faith, or folklore from the world above. These stories did more than pass the time. They reinforced identity, transmitted survival wisdom, and most importantly, they painted pictures of the sun, the wind, and green fields, keeping the memory of the surface world alive and tangible. The carved churches served as the central nervous system for this psychological defense. Religious observance provided a framework for understanding their suffering, a way to transform fear into devotion. The familiar rituals, the chanted prayers, the sight of a cross carved into the wall, offered profound comfort and a sense of cosmic order. It reminded them that they were not forgotten, even in the belly of the earth. But perhaps the most powerful resource was simply each other. The social fabric of the community was their ultimate safety net. In such proximity, grief, anxiety, and despair could not be hidden. This forced a culture of mutual care where checking on a neighbor's well-being was as crucial as checking the food stores. Shared hardship forged a profound bond, a collective identity stronger than any individual fear. They were not 20,000 individuals hiding, they were derinkuyu, a single entity waiting in the dark. This human dimension completes the picture of their survival. The city's success was a triumph of social engineering as much as civil engineering. The stone kept out invaders, but it was the shared stories, the synchronized routines, and the unspoken agreement to bear the burden together that kept out despair. Their resilience was a quiet, daily practice, a choice to uphold the rituals of life even when life had been reduced to its most basic elements. This collective spirit was the final, invisible pillar holding up their world, proving that the strongest foundations are often built not from rock, but from trust and shared purpose. Yet, this meticulously balanced existence could not last forever, and the story of its end is as revealing as the story of its creation. The legends that swirl around derinkuyu are as deep and winding as its tunnels. Over the centuries, this place of refuge has transformed in the collective memory, becoming a canvas for our deepest fascinations. Some stories insist the city is merely an antechamber, that its deepest, still-sealed passages connect to a vast, continent-spanning network of tunnels, a literal underground world. Others whisper of royal treasures hidden in a forgotten chamber, or that the perfectly round stone doors were the work of a lost, more advanced civilization. The most enduring tales remove human agency altogether, suggesting the city was carved by mythical beings or supernatural forces in a single night. These narratives are powerfully alluring, offering a layer of magic to an already incredible reality. Yet, when we hold them against the archaeological evidence, a different, profoundly human story comes into focus, one that is arguably more remarkable. The tool marks on the walls are not the scorings of claws or magic, but the deliberate, patient strikes of metal on soft stone. The soot on the kitchen ceilings is from ordinary olive oil lamps. The design, while brilliant, solves very human problems of air, water, and security. This was not built by gods or giants, but by farmers, stonemasons, and families who refused to be erased. They worked generation after generation, their effort a quiet, monumental act of collective will. The value of the myths, then, is not in their literal truth, but in what they reveal about us. They show how derinkuyu has transcended its original purpose. It has evolved from a place of tangible fear, a shelter from steel and fire, into a vessel for intangible wonder, a symbol of the unknown that dwells just beneath the surface of our world. The legends are a testament to its enduring grip on our imagination, proving that sometimes the truth of human ingenuity is so astounding that it inevitably births its own mythology. Derinkuyu's story echoes through the 20th century and into our own. The massive stone wheels that sealed its doors find a chilling parallel in the blast-proof hatches of Cold War bunkers and in modern proposals for shelters against catastrophic events. The technology has evolved from chisels to reinforced concrete, from oil lamps to air filtration systems powered by generators, yet the core human impulse remains startlingly identical. When faced with a threat perceived as existential, our most primal response is often the same: to dig in, to hide, and to wait. This continuity forces a profound question. If our tools have advanced so dramatically, have we truly progressed beyond the fundamental dilemmas faced by those 20,000 people in the dark? The challenges of sustaining life in a sealed environment, of maintaining social order under extreme pressure, and of preserving mental fortitude in prolonged isolation, these are not historical curiosities. They are timeless human puzzles. Studying derinkuyu provides a 1,000-year-old case study in these very problems, offering a stark, pre-industrial blueprint against which we can measure our own plans and fears. It strips away the gloss of modern engineering and asks us to consider the raw human variables that no amount of technology can fully solve. What would we prioritize if we had to seal the door today? Beyond the obvious needs of food and water, what cultural artifacts, what knowledge, what symbols of our identity would we carry into the earth to remind us of who we are? The people of Cappadocia chose to carve churches to preserve the rituals of their faith. Our choices would undoubtedly be different, but the underlying need would be the same: to cling to meaning. This historical perspective reveals that the hardest part of building a refuge is not the architecture, but the sociology. It asks us to look at our own communities and consider what invisible pillars of trust and cooperation would need to hold if the sky ever fell. Derinkuyu stands as a silent, ancient mirror, reflecting not just who we were, but who we might become when the world above grows quiet. The true genius of derinkuyu lies not in its defiance of nature, but in its profound collaboration with it. This was not an act of conquest over the landscape, but a deep, intelligent adaptation to its every rhythm and property. By choosing to move life underground, the builders solved a suite of environmental challenges in one masterstroke. On the surface, Cappadocia is a land of extremes, blistering hot in summer and bitingly cold in winter. A community exposed on the plains was vulnerable not just to armies but to the climate itself. Underground, the immense thermal mass of the bedrock created a perfectly moderated microclimate. The thousands of tons of volcanic tuff acted like a giant stone battery, absorbing excess heat in the summer and slowly releasing stored warmth in the winter. This kept the interior temperature remarkably stable, hovering around a cool, consistent 55 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. Imagine the energy saved, the comfort ensured, simply by understanding and utilizing the Earth's own natural insulation. This stability was a silent guardian, protecting not just people, but their precious stores of grain and oil from spoilage caused by temperature swings. Their relationship with water followed the same principle of seamless integration. The city's deep wells tapped into the aquifer far below, a closed-loop system that drew from a secret, renewable source without ever touching or depleting the rivers and streams on the surface. Their consumption left no mark on the visible ecosystem, Rainwater, when it was collected, was channeled through hidden conduits into their cisterns, a careful harvesting of what the sky provided without causing erosion or runoff. This represents a profound, low-tech symbiosis. They used the geology for protection without pillaging it, for sustenance without scarring it. Every element was borrowed and returned in a cycle of minimal impact. In an era where we discuss climate resilience and sustainable architecture, derinkuyu stands as a monumental, ancient case study. It teaches a powerful lesson about resilience through harmony. The community did not build a fortress against the environment. They invited the environment to become the fortress. They listened to the stone, understood the water, and designed a life that flowed with those elements rather than fighting against them. Their survival was rooted in this deep ecological intelligence, a reminder that sometimes the strongest shelter is not built on the land, but woven into its very fabric. Secrecy was its shield and also its shroud. The generations who built and used derinkuyu understood that its greatest power lay in being unknown. This was not a monument meant to proclaim a king's glory or a city's wealth to the world. It was the opposite, a masterpiece of invisibility. Consequently, its story was never etched into grand stone steles or recorded in the chronicles of distant empires. The knowledge of its existence, its layout, and its mechanisms was a form of precious, dangerous currency, guarded within the tight circle of the community itself. This information would have been transmitted orally from parent to child, from elder to apprentice builder, in hushed tones within the safety of their own homes. A child would learn the location of the third ventilation shaft not from a map, but by being led to it in the dark. They would memorize the feel of the stone wheel's groove with their own hands. The city's blueprint lived not on parchment, but in collective memory and muscle memory. This system was perfectly suited for its purpose, creating a living, breathing archive that moved with the people it protected. Yet, this very strength contained the seed of the city's eventual disappearance from common knowledge. As the centuries turned and the great invasions of the medieval era slowly subsided, the immediate, visceral need for the underground refuge faded. The stone wheels remained closed for longer periods, then for generations. Life on the surface stabilized, trade routes became more secure, and the relentless fear that had necessitated the city's creation began to ebb. With that easing of threat, the vital, urgent reason to pass on every detail of the subterranean world diminished. The stories of the long nights below became legends told to wide-eyed grandchildren, tales that might have seemed exaggerated or symbolic over time. Specific instructions about maintaining the deepest wells or the hidden tunnel to the next city might simply stop being taught because no one anticipated ever needing them again. The knowledge fragmented, then faded, like a path through a forest that is no longer walked, slowly reclaimed by the undergrowth of forgetting. For the wider world, for historians and mapmakers in far-off capitals, derinkuyu did not just become obscure, it ceased to exist as a fact. It vanished from the record because its entire purpose was to leave no record for outsiders to find. Its history was intentionally buried, not in the earth, but in silence. This legacy of deliberate obscurity makes its modern rediscovery so electrifying. When that homeowner broke through his basement wall in 1963, he was not just uncovering an old cave. He was piercing a veil of silence that had been maintained for centuries. He was recovering a chapter of history that was never meant to be read. A story a community chose to conceal for the most understandable of reasons, their own survival. We are not just looking at ancient engineering, we are listening to a whisper from the past that was supposed to remain a secret. This transforms derinkuyu from a mere archaeological site into something far more poignant, a recovered memory of resilience, a testament written in empty space about the lengths to which people will go to protect their future, even if it means erasing their own story from the light of day. The rediscovery of derinkuyu did not end with archaeology. It opened a new chapter of human interaction with the ancient stone. Today, this hidden city is hidden no more, drawing hundreds of thousands of visitors each year who walk the very corridors where a civilization once held its breath. This influx of attention is a powerful economic lifeline for the modern region, transforming a local legend into a global destination that supports guides, shops, and families. Yet, this very fascination presents a profound and ironic challenge. The soft volcanic tuff that made the city possible is now threatened by the presence of the crowds it was built to protect. Every footstep on the original floors, every exhalation of moist air in the enclosed spaces, and even the gentle warmth of artificial lights introduce subtle changes to a microenvironment that had been stable for a millennium. The stone itself, which withstood sieges, is now slowly weathering under a new kind of constant exposure. This creates a delicate balancing act for conservators, a modern puzzle of how to share this wonder without loving it to death. Their solutions are a quiet testament to respect. Visitors now follow carefully designated pathways that minimize contact with the most fragile walls. Sophisticated sensors monitor humidity and carbon dioxide levels in real time, allowing for adjustments to ventilation or visitor flow to keep the environment within safe parameters. Meticulous restoration projects use traditional materials and techniques to stabilize crumbling sections, not to rebuild, but to gently reinforce. This ongoing work raises essential questions for our time about how we act as stewards for the fragile pages of human history. We are tasked with a new kind of guardianship, one that requires managing not just preservation, but the consequences of our own curiosity. It asks us to walk softly, to look with care, and to ensure that our desire to touch the past does not become the very force that erases it for those who come after. The deepest levels of derinkuyu remain a mystery, sealed off by time and caution. While visitors can walk a carefully maintained route through several of its upper floors, this represents only a fraction of the city's true scale. Many corridors end abruptly at piles of collapsed rock, and countless passageways are blocked by ancient debris or closed for structural safety. This is not the end of the story, but a pause. Modern technology is now peering into those sealed shadows without ever lifting a chisel. Using ground-penetrating radar and other geophysical tools, researchers have sent pulses of energy down through the bedrock, listening for the echoes that return. The data paints a tantalizing picture, suggesting voids, chambers, and tunnel networks that extend far beyond the currently mapped areas. The city we know may be just the entrance hall to something even more vast. This raises thrilling possibilities. What lies in those untouched spaces? Perhaps a grand council chamber where leaders met in total secrecy, or a specialized workshop for metalworking, its tools left exactly as they were when the last artisan walked away. There could be libraries of clay tablets or parchment scrolls, preserved in the dry, cool air, waiting to tell their story. Or, most intriguingly, the radar hints might confirm the ancient legends of long tunnels connecting derinkuyu to other subterranean settlements miles away. Each blocked passage is a locked door, and behind it could be the next chapter of this underground saga. These potential discoveries do more than add rooms to a map. They keep the narrative of derinkuyu vibrantly alive. They remind us that history is not a closed book sitting on a shelf, but a living field of study where our understanding is always evolving. The past can still surprise us, reaching out from the shadows with new truths. Every echo from the radar, every cautious probe by an archaeologist, is a conversation with that hidden world. It promises that derinkuyu, this city built for silence and secrecy, may not yet be finished sharing its secrets with the sunlit world above. The silent halls of derinkuyu have echoed far beyond their stone walls, finding a second life in the stories we tell ourselves. This ancient refuge has become a powerful archetype in modern culture, a ready-made setting for tales of mystery and resilience. You can find its shadow in the sprawling underground dwarven cities of fantasy epics, in the hidden rebel bases of science fiction sagas, and in the post-apocalyptic bunkers of video games. In these fictional worlds, the underground city is rarely just a location, it is a symbol. It represents the last bastion of a lost civilization, a vault of forgotten knowledge, or the final hope for a community clinging to survival against impossible odds. This translation from historical fact to cultural motif is profound. It shows that the raw concept of derinkuyu, a society choosing collective secrecy over annihilation, taps into a deep, universal nerve. Documentary filmmakers and authors of historical fiction are drawn to its tangible reality, using its corridors to ask direct questions about human ingenuity under pressure. Meanwhile, creators of fantasy and speculative genres borrow its blueprint to explore themes that feel urgently modern: isolation in a connected world, the ethics of survival, and what we choose to preserve when everything seems lost. Each portrayal, whether striving for accuracy or using it as a springboard, extends the city's legacy. It is no longer solely an archaeological site in Turkey. It is an idea, a narrative tool that allows us to project our own fears and hopes onto its timeless, cavernous framework. This cultural recycling proves that derinkuyu's true impact is not locked in the past. By analyzing these creative interpretations, we see a fascinating feedback loop. The city's historical truth inspires fiction, and that fiction, in turn, reframes how we understand the historical truth, highlighting the timeless human drama at its core. The stone wheels and ventilation shafts become more than engineering feats. They become metaphors for resilience itself. This ongoing conversation between the ancient world and the modern imagination ensures that the story of those 20,000 people hiding in the dark continues to find new audiences, not just as a chapter in a history book, but as a foundational myth for our own uncertain times. The true scale of derinkuyu's construction defies simple explanation. Coordinating such a monumental, multi-generational project without any written blueprints we can find is a staggering thought. How did a father explain to his son where to begin carving a new staircase that would not intersect with a vital ventilation shaft 2 levels below? How were decisions made about when to expand downward rather than outward? There was no central planning office, no project manager in the modern sense. The coordination likely lived in an oral tradition of immense precision, a shared mental map passed down through stories, songs, and direct apprenticeship. A master builder would teach an apprentice not just how to wield a chisel, but how to listen to the sound it made against the stone, to feel for hidden faults, and to understand the invisible lines of force within the mountain. This was knowledge written not on paper, but in practice, a living library of intuition and experience that guided each new cut for centuries. The harmony of the final structure suggests a consensus of purpose so strong it acted as its own blueprint, a collective vision maintained across dozens of lifetimes. The moment of descent itself was a tightly choreographed secret. What was the specific signal that sent 20,000 people streaming silently into the earth? It could not have been a shouted order or a ringing bell that might also alert an approaching enemy. Historians suggest a system of visual cues, perhaps a specific pattern of smoke from a distant watchtower fire, or the sudden extinguishing of lamps in a sequence of surface homes. Maybe trusted runners carried a token, a broken piece of pottery or a knotted cord from village to village, a pre-arranged sign that meant the time had come. The efficiency required was absolute. Families had pre-packed bundles, livestock were kept ready, and community leaders would have rehearsed this drill until it was second nature. The entire population had to transform from an open society into a hidden one within a matter of hours, leaving behind a ghost town with no trace of panic. The success of this vanishing act depended on a signal known to all, yet utterly meaningless to anyone outside the trust of the community. Once the great stone wheel sealed shut, a new and more intimate set of challenges began. How did a community govern itself during months of tense confinement? With no possibility of leaving and limited privacy, disputes over resources, space, or noise were inevitable. The city's design offers clues to social management. The presence of large communal chambers suggests spaces for gathering and airing grievances. Leadership likely fell to a council of elders or respected figures whose authority was rooted in wisdom and fairness, not just strength. Their most critical role may have been as arbiters, mediating conflicts before they could escalate and threaten the group's fragile equilibrium. In an environment where a single act of carelessness could reveal their position to the world above, social harmony was not a luxury, it was a security protocol. Maintaining order meant upholding the unspoken contract that had brought them all underground, a shared recognition that their survival was inextricably linked. Perhaps the most practical mystery is one of endurance. What was the actual record for a single, continuous occupation? While the city was equipped for long-term survival, the psychological and social strain must have had a breaking point. Was it 3 months, 6, a full year? Without written diaries from the depths, we can only speculate based on the capacity of the storage rooms and the stresses evident in the archaeological record. Each occupation would have been a race between the patience of the people inside and the persistence of the threat outside. The decision to finally unseal the door would have been as cautious and deliberate as the decision to close it, likely based on scouts sent up through the narrowest ventilation shafts to assess the world above. The maximum duration remains a silent testament to human resilience, a number known only to those who lived it and never recorded, because the very act of survival was their only necessary record. These enduring gaps in our knowledge are not failures. They are the spaces where history breathes. They remind us that some truths are held in the silence between the tool marks, in the echoes of decisions made in darkness. Each unanswered question about derinkuyu is an invitation, a reminder that the past is not a puzzle to be solved and set aside, but a conversation that continues across the centuries. The city's greatest legacy may be its ability to make us wonder, to force us to confront the limits of our understanding and to marvel at the profound, quiet capabilities of those who came before us. Derinkuyu was never just a hole in the ground. It was a choice carved in stone to preserve a future when the present seemed intent on destruction. Our journey through its echoing halls reveals a profound truth about human history, one that often gets lost in the grand narratives of empires and kings. The real story is written in the quiet, desperate ingenuity of ordinary people. Every disguised entrance, every hidden ventilation shaft, and every communal kitchen speaks of a community that refused to vanish. They traded sunlight for safety, not as a defeat but as a strategic, breathtakingly clever act of defiance. Their resilience was not passive waiting. It was an active, multi-generational project to outlast every storm. This city beneath the city teaches us that the most powerful monuments are not always the ones that reach for the sky. Sometimes they are the ones that delve deep into the earth, safeguarding the fragile light of a culture against the darkness of its time. The legacy of derinkuyu is a reminder to look closer, to listen for the stories whispered not from thrones, but from the very ground we walk on. They are stories of adaptation, of collective genius, and of the unbreakable will to protect a way of life for the generations to come. As we step back into the sun, let that hidden world inspire a deeper curiosity. What other chapters of human courage and creativity are waiting just beneath the surface for us to discover? If you found this journey into the depths fascinating, consider subscribing for more explorations of history's hidden wonders. We would love to hear your thoughts, so share in the comments below what ancient mystery you think we should uncover next.